One.
Good evening. I'm called to order the November 5th meeting of the Milton School Committee. I would like to make a motion to adjourn from open session to enter executive session for the purpose of conducting strategy session for contract negotiations with non-union personnel, the superintendent, and to return to open session. Do I have
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor? Oh, roll call, sorry. Nathan?
Yes.
Lizzie?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Okay. Right, so we will adjourn to executive session and then come back to open session at the close of that meeting. Welcome. We're back in open session. If we could all stand for the
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us know if you're here for public comment. Should I say that again? All right, take two. Every meeting we allow 15 minutes for public comment. If there is anybody in the audience who is here for public comment, if they could come forward. If there is anybody online who is here for public comment, if they could raise their hand. All right, I don't see anyone here. I didn't see any hands. No. All right. There's no one here for public comment, so we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Chair Serio. First of all, I'd like to introduce two of our student reps that are working with us from Milton High School. I'd like to bring to the table Angela Trong. Angela is an excited senior who is serving her first term as a student representative to the school committee. She loves to be involved at Milton High School and is president of the Youth in Government Club, Asian Culture Club, Red Cross Club, and the MHS Orchestra. And back for his second meeting is Spencer Futrell. Spencer is a high school freshman who is happy to serve as the school committee representative for his first year. Spencer plays football at MHS and is planning on trying out with the basketball team. In his free time, Spencer enjoys volunteering, food drives, and supporting the community. So welcome, Angela, and welcome, Spencer.
Hi, hello. I'm Spencer Futrell. I'm in 9th grade, as many of y'all might know. And we are here today to share some things with you. So fall sports are in swing at Milton High. Boys soccer won in overtime earlier this week, and girls soccer play tomorrow. And the football team has their first playoff game on Friday. Also, Milton High Theater are performing Frozen November 21st to 23rd if y'all interested in going. Also, Thanksgiving break is coming up November 26th to 28th. Also, last but not least for me, MHS Winter Concert December 9th.
Thank you, Spencer. My name is Angela Trong. I'm a senior now, and I'd like to report back that student government is busy planning for a pep rally, one of the most exciting school-wide events this year. We typically have Spirit Week leading up to it, for example, Pajama Day, Nationality Day, or any sorts of those type of days to create excitement throughout the school. And there are many different performances happening during pep rally, such as the marching band performing, cheer happening, and chorus singing. We might also possibly have the step team this year as well. In our separate meetings, we are continuing to find a topic to focus on, and we hope to focus on something relevant to the school committee as well as the student body. We have a meeting scheduled next week, so we should have more to share at the next school committee meeting.
Will there be any questions today?
Good luck to all of our teams in the playoffs.
Thank you. Have an amazing day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Angela. It's hard to follow that, but I will go give my own superintendent's update. The Milton Public Schools faculty and staff had a wonderful full day of professional development, which was yesterday, November 4th. I want to thank Carla Koser, our assistant superintendent for curriculum and learning, for planning and leading the team of principals and curriculum leaders on this really productive day. As you might think, the day surrounded our 5 priorities that we were focusing on this year. Both Carla and I started the session with all of our elementary staff at the Pierce Middle School, where we did a 45-minute session on rigor, Tier 1 instruction, supporting all learners, active steps towards supporting students not meeting at grade level, and also our culture and rigor topics. It was very, very helpful for Carla and I to get in front of all the staff, because if you remember in August, we did not get in front of everybody because we gave that time back to the building principals and the teachers. So it was refreshing to address the entire elementary staff at the Pierce, and then we drove up here and addressed the full Pierce and high school staff up here at the high school. Throughout the day, we had all of our fellow educators present sessions on things like Project Lead the Way, increasing student achievement and student engagement, executive functioning, UDL, planning guides, engaging all learners with rigorous tasks, vertical alignment in our 6 through 12 ELA, and Tier 1 instruction support. So there are 2 heavy catalogs of courses that every single teacher could have taken. I think we offered up to
It's about 45
sessions for our staff that were led by our principals, our curriculum directors, and our educators across the district. So we're getting some really nice feedback about folks feeling like they had good choice, an agency to choose what they wanted their professional development in, that they felt really connected to the 5 priorities that we've been working on since August, and that they also had time to do some work amongst themselves in the afternoon after having some, what we called a
Self-care and connection.
Self-care and action break. We had a very great hour of ballroom dancing instruction for some of our staff who took advantage of it, in a baking contest, as well as a walking club and a variety of things. So very good day of professional development on the core subjects of our 5 priorities and other issues that impact our educators. A little bit of professional development around personal and relationship building and culture and climate at the district level, which we think is super important. And as always, Carla and I were trying to model our 5 priorities throughout that day. If we were asking staff to present sessions, and we presented one ourselves. So good day. Many thanks to Carla and her team. I want to give the folks of the community a transportation update. We promised folks at the end of September that we would have a 2-phase approach to bringing up to 70 students off the wait list. We did a phase 1 at midpoint in October, where we put back about 54 students from the wait list onto buses to the schools. We continued to do data counts for the last 2 weeks at the middle school, and we went back to our wait list of about 22 additional students. And just this past Monday, we were able to place those 22 students on a bus, and that will conclude our fully exhausting the list to 0. So we have placed over 70 students, getting everybody who applied on time for a bus pass off the wait list and on a bus. This was done without adding any resources, but increasing the capacity on every bus, and also looking at the routes a little differently and adding some stops within the bus routes that we had. We are sending out communications to those 22 people, letting them know that they're off the wait list and what the new stops are. We're also sending a communication out to all bus student families to let them know that the buses will be filled with more students, and that we want to proactively let folks know that we anticipate ridership to move to capacity more in the winter months than they are right now in the fall, and that we should be ready to be prepared to have students sit 3 to a seat where needed in order to make the capacity match up our need The number of students we have on each bus does not exceed the legal capacity, so we feel very comfortable in that. But we just wanted to make sure that we were explicit with not only the folks that we put on the bus and took off the wait list, but everybody who's riding as well, because they could be impacted later on in the year when some of the seats get tight. That's a good news story. That problem has been solved. That does not address the students that were on the wait list that did not put their bus pass application in on time. So that will be part of the factoring that we do when we start looking at next year. Keeping in mind that anybody who lives 1.5 miles from school, actually 1 mile or farther from school, is on a bus for Pierce in the high school. So that's a good news story. I want to remind folks that there is no school on November 11, which is Veterans Day, and I want to thank our band at the high school in advance for performing at the parade, the Veterans Parade, and the ceremony at Town Hall on Tuesday the 11th. We also have an early dismissal day on November 19. A reminder, as we were let know by our student rep, that Frozen will be performed at the high school on November 21, 22, and 23. It's an amazing production, so get your tickets, and they'll sell out quickly, so we advise you to call the high school. And as we look forward to November 27th being Thanksgiving, which means there's no school on the 26th and no school on the 28th, the 2 days surrounding Thanksgiving. And that is my update.
Great, thank you. Now we'll do the MCAS overview.
So I'd like to bring up V, who is our data specialist in the Milton Public Schools. Carla and I are new to the Milton Public Schools and are so thankful to have the services of a data specialist with the qualifications that V presents and works with us in every single meeting that we go to. When V and I met in August, I asked her what her goals were for the year and how she could help. And she asked, can I just start coming to principals and coordinators meetings? And I want to share the data, I want to use the data, and I want to make sure that the people who need access to the data have it. So I want to thank her for being not only at every meeting that we have for our secondary and elementary principal coordinators meetings, but our leadership meetings, and also meeting with principals at schools to go over their data specifically, whether it's grade level data or school-based data. Tonight we're presenting basically our initial presentation on MCAS. There will be several other student achievement meetings that we will have. There's a lot that we want to share. There's lots of things that we need to explore. And there's lots of things that we want to make sure our community knows that we're working on in order to improve our student outcomes. As that is our continuous cycle of improvement that we want to exhibit. So we would like to, if we could, put the slides on the screen, Mark. So thank you very much for being the slide person tonight. So the first slide, first of all, we want to note that there are multiple data sources that we always look at in the Milton Public Schools, some of which are part of how we do MCAS, which is an annual look at what happened in the year prior. But also, as V points out in this slide and throughout the set of slides, really articulated in our principal leadership meeting today, our principals wanted to make sure that we also had other data points that we used as a formative way of looking at student achievement, our DIBELS, our iReady, all of which helps us teachers and our administrators pivot in our common assessments during the school year to see if we can increase the student growth of all of our students. It's important to remember that the standardized assessment, which is MCAS, is a useful measure for what students have learned, and they're on track to meet the rigor of the next grade level. We do firmly believe that MCAS really lets us know what we need to work on as adults. This is an adult informative exercise, more so than what students get, because we believe that what students need in terms of shifts in our teaching strategies is the formative data that we use week to week and month to month during the school year. All of this data is important, and all of it helps shape our work towards reducing the amount of students not at grade level and enhancing student achievement across all parts of our student body. And we'll see some of that information tonight. So V, thank you very much for being here. And I think our format will be that we'll let V go through the whole presentation. And if there's any technical pieces to the presentation you'd like to ask, I think V might be the person for the technical pieces. And then teaching and learning, and data questions would be for Carla and I.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here tonight. So, like Superintendent Phelan said, we're here to give you really a big overview of how our district did on the MCAS testing, really on the accountability framework from the state. So I'll go a little bit into that. But here's our agenda for today, just some takeaway. Then, like I said, we're gonna cover kind of state accountability determination via the lens of the MCAS, looking at different student groups' performance, and then also touching on absenteeism. And then we'll end up by looking at some peer district comparison just to see where we are against our peers. Next slide. Okay, so for the previous school year, 24-25, MPS continues to outperform the state average in all subjects across all grade levels within all student groups. This is something that continues to be the trend. Should I just speak louder? Okay, I'll try speaking a little louder. Okay, so this continues to be the trend for us in the district here. In terms of our ELA and math scores, in grades 3 to 8, the scores improved slightly. In grades 10, we did see some decline, and this is across the state. We see the same in terms of state performance. So it's nothing that is singular to Milton here. Science, however, significantly improved this year in all our tested grade area. And that is one area where we are actually pulling ahead of the states. So we're very proud of that. Civics, this is the first year that the state has given the 8th grade civics exam. And this is simply how we scored. 56% of our students scored meeting or exceeding expectations. And then lastly, our priority student groups. So that is students with disabilities, English learners, low-income students, African-American Black students, Hispanic and Latino students are performing significantly better than their peers statewide. So that's comparing to the same group statewide. However, they are still lagging behind their counterparts here in Milton. And that is some of the challenges that we continue to address as a district. Next slide. So as I said, we are going to be looking at our data through the lens of the DESE accountability framework. And through this framework, our individual schools continue to be rated highly as compared to other schools in the same grade span. Okay, and the accountability framework takes into account these factors: ELA performance, math performance, science performance on the MCAS, along with SGP, which is the student growth percentile. And for those who are new to the education lingo, SGP basically compares your rate of growth against other students who have the same scores as you from the previous year. So it's telling you how far ahead you've gone in comparison to someone who scored the same as you. Okay. The accountability framework also takes a look at English learners and their scores on the access test. It considers chronic absenteeism, so that's missing 10% or more of school. And then other high school metrics as applicable to high schools. So graduation rate, dropout rate, and advanced coursework completion. Okay? And DESE takes all of these individual components and aggregate them together into an overall result. And then it gives us 2 ratings. Next slide, please. So the 2 ratings given are progress towards improvement targets. And this number, this percentage, basically gives you a sense of how much progress has been made towards the school's targets, which DESE examines based on the school's individual performance. So several years of histories of how the school has performed, and then DESE comes up with these several targets in ELA, math, science, SGP, and then DESI totals everything up and gives you the overall score of how much progress you've made towards those targets that DESI set for you, okay? And then the second rating that's given is the accountability percentile, which compares, so DESI totals everything, all the performance on all the indicators up, and then it compares schools in the same bucket together. So high schools are compared against each other, non-high schools are compared against each other, and then there's a third bucket with mixed grades, so any district that has, or any schools rather, that has one tested non-high school grade and one high school grade is in that mixed bucket. And it gives you the percentile of how you rank compared to all these other schools in that same bucket that you are in. So essentially our elementary and our middle schools are counted in the same bucket. Okay. And how we use these ratings and indicators is really to dig deeper into the data and identify where our strengths and weaknesses might be and to work on them. Next slide. And so this chart gives you basically the results of the two ratings for each of our schools in the district. And the accountability percentile, that's given to schools only, so it doesn't, DESI doesn't do that for districts. So here, I mean, clearly we see that our schools are on the higher percentage, accountability percentage. And there are really two places where we're looking at and we're exploring the data with the principals and the teachers to understand more how we can make improvements. Next slide. Okay, so in the next set of slides, I'm gonna pull up some historical performance in different tested MCAS areas. Next slide. So in this one slide, we're looking at the history of our ELA MCAS for grades 3 through 8. And 2017 is actually going back to the first year that the state turned over to the next generation MCAS. So we kind of see the historical progression of how we've done as a district up until 2025, which is the column on the far right. And you can see there's an obvious dip between 2019 and 2022. And we know that that's the impact of the pandemic. And after that, you see that our scores, our ELA scores, are moving in the right direction, increasing in trend. Next slide. Okay, so this slide is looking at our math MCAS scores, grade 3 to 8. And you see that same dip in 2022. And our data is, the blue bars are definitely increasing. And so we're happy about that. We wish that, you know, the red bar would decrease. And you can kind of see the red bar is more than, the red portions on these columns are more than what they were pre-pandemic, and that's definitely something that our curriculum directors and teachers are very aware of and are working towards closing that. So, next slide. So this is looking at our district science scores for grade 5 and grade 8 combined. And we're looking at a really good news stories in science. Okay. And in 2025, we're seeing that the percentage of students who are meeting and exceeding expectations are the highest that we've seen since we've switched over to this new science MCAS. Next slide. Okay, so this is showing the results of our ELA MCAS for grade 10. And we see that this year there is definitely a noticeable dip. And that's reflective of what's happening at the state level as well. There's chatter about, the impact of the law change on this, and we'll keep watching this, and this is definitely something that we'll be paying attention to. Okay. Next slide. This is math MCAS for grade 10. And as you can see, performance has been pretty even for the last 5 years. Next slide. And the grade 10 science MCAS. So similar to the science MCAS scores that we saw for grade 5 and grade 8, grade 10, there's a huge bump in 2025 scores as well. Next slide. Okay, so there's a lot of numbers on this chart, but this is basically trying to show the performance trends in ELA for each grade level. And we find that sometimes when we disaggregate the data, then you can see better where spots where we need to pay particular attention to. Okay? So just taking the example of grade 3 ELA, you see what the percentage of students meeting and exceeding expectation for each years are. And then in the right, on the 4 rightmost columns, you see that those numbers, the red number, the number in red are indicating a decline, and the number in green are indicating improvement, okay? And numbers in black are where they're not as much change. So that's there. And the 2 columns on the rightmost 2 columns are indicating our performance as compared to 2019. So in grade 3 ELA, compared to 2019, we're 16 percentage points down from where we started. And over that same time span, the state is experiencing a 14 percentage points down from where it started, okay? So if you look at just all the numbers down the column for each grade level, you see that grade 3 and grade 6 ELA are where we've experienced the biggest decline in our scores over the years, and that's something that we'll be looking at closely. Next slide. So this is for the performance trends for math in each of the grade levels. So the chart is presented in the same way, and you see some of the highlighted areas where the district numbers are lower than that of the state. We have more room to get back to where we were in 2019 as compared to where the state was. Next slide. And this is the trend for science. And on this slide, we see a lot of green, and that is the good news story for this MCAS administration. Next slide. So in the next couple of slides, we're going to be looking at the performance of various student groups in the district. In every student group, in every content area, Milton's students perform better than the state, and in many cases, it's a double-digit difference, so that's a significant difference. Okay. Historical differences still exist between the performance of our student group within the district, though. And so we remain focused on improving the outcomes of these students with disabilities, English learners, low income students, African American, Black, and Hispanic Latino students. Next slide. Okay. Again, a lot of numbers on this chart, but it's basically giving you the percentage of students who are meeting and exceeding expectations in each of the tested content. So in grade 3 to 8 ELA, the green boxes are where we highlighted where our student group is performing not only higher than the state's student group, but more a double-digit difference, basically. So where our in grade 3 to 8 ELA, our English learners and formal English learners, 33% of them are meeting and exceeding expectations versus only 19% of EL students at the state is meeting or exceeding expectation. Okay. And as you can see, there are a lot of green on the chart, and we're happy that our students are doing well as compared to their peers at the state level. However, if you look at the all student category at the bottom, that is basically the average of how our students are doing, and we see that some of the other student groups are not doing as well as the all student group, which is the average. Next. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about chronic absenteeism. Next slide, please. And the reason that we talk about it is because there is a strong correlation between attendance and academic performance. And our chronic absenteeism rate in 2025 was actually the 9th lowest in the entire state. So that's telling us that all students are coming to schools. Our families are supporting our students to come to school. Everyone is invested in being here and invested in the success of our students. Our chronic absenteeism rates have been declining since the 21-22 school year. And there's still some differences between the all student group and our priority student groups. So, and you'll see this in the chart in the next slide. So here, the red line there, that's the all student groups. And then you can see the different student groups being represented by the other colors. And the important thing that we want to share on this graph is that all the lines are trending downward, which is what we want to continue seeing. Next slide. Your district. Okay, next slide. So just to kind of get a gauge of how we're doing in comparison to some of our peers, we pull a list of DESE comparable districts. So DESE generate this list every year based on similar demographics such as grade span, total enrollment, and special populations. And we have a bunch of names here, which are on our DESE comparable list. And we also added in some neighboring districts so that we kind of get some geographic comparison as well. And you can see what the comparison looks like on the next slide. So this is giving us some key categories for comparison on the leftmost hand side. So percentage of students with high need, per pupil expenditure, percentage of chronically absent students, along with the MCAS scores for all these districts. And a lot of numbers on here, but I wanted to highlight the per pupil expenditure for Milton, which is still the lowest of any of the groups here on the chart, and also our chronic absenteeism rate, the lowest. And in terms of our MCAS scores, you see that we are solidly in the middle of the pack. We're not the highest, but we're also not doing badly compared to our other peers who are spending more on student expenditure than we are as a district.
Sophia, do you mind if I pause here for a moment? So this is the last data slide. So first I want to thank you for providing this data, and we left it in the same format as last year so we could have somewhat of an apples to apples comparison. We did take some slides out, but I do want to pause here because I think that we always want to make sure that we're comparing ourselves to the state as that generic bar. But this last slide really lets us compare ourselves to the DESE comparables and our neighbors, which is a different standard. And we should hold ourselves to a different standard. So first of all, it's nice to see that we're having more kids come to school and the chronic absentee rate is down. And as V pointed out, the good news is for all students, it's down to roughly 4.9. But interestingly, for our demographics that we separate a little bit, they're still higher. So we really have work to do to make sure that all students are coming back and attending school at a higher rate. So we're glad that that's better than our comparables. And again, this is not a state comparable. It's who the state says we should compare ourselves to and then our towns. And we've been using these towns historically, so we have an apples to apples comparison. When we look at the towns around us, the geographic towns, I think I went through and checked every box that we were doing better than across the matrix of scores. So from that box of geographic neighbors, I think we've solidly performed or outperformed those districts in the majority of those data comparisons. Where we struggle is when we start to compare ourselves to the DESE communities of Needham, Sharon, and Wellesley. And we're here to say very clearly that our scores need to improve, that our scores have been flat for a period of time, that we have pockets of success, the most recent one being a really good pop in science, which was intentional because our science educators and our science director did some wonderful work in hiring and using data to inform instruction and to work collaboratively, and really at the elementary, middle school, and high school level really looked at curriculum, especially at the elementary level where our science is not taught every day, and then they really get into everyday science in middle school. So we're learning in what we're doing well and want to replicate that. But we acknowledge that, when we go back to looking at the 2017-18 scores, we need to get at least back to pre-pandemic scores. And I think we need to do better than our pre-pandemic scores. And one of the reasons when we go into the slides that we all looked at, not only do we need rigor for the 20 to 25% of students who are not meeting benchmark, We also need rigor for the 13% of students who are exceeding, who have stayed flat as well. Everybody needs rigor. Everybody needs rigor in order to increase their learning outcomes. And we met yesterday with every single staff member and emphasized rigor, tier 1 instruction, actively pursuing strategies to bring students not at benchmark up to benchmark. Those 5 priorities that we're looking at, you can see them in each set of number comparisons that we either did well in or we did not do well in. But the community should know that sadly the state is not to where it should be, and a lot of our comparable districts are probably working as hard as we are to try to lift their scores to pre-pandemic scores. And to V's point, if you look at that per pupil expenditure, that is an apples to apples number across all those communities. If you take our DESE comparable communities, Needham, Sharon, Wellesley, which pay or spend $23,000, $20,000, and $27,000. So we take the average of $23,000 per student of those 3 communities. That's roughly $4,000 more per student. If you multiply that by 4,300 students, that's $12 million. There's $12 million more in those 3 communities than there are in Milton to solve these issues, to attack these problems, to make sure our students have what they need. So money is not everything, because there are communities that we do better than that spend more than we do. There are communities up there that spend $26,000 per student, and I believe that district we have outperformed in every category. So it's not all about money, but that is a significant factor, that there's a gap in funding that prohibits certain things to be done in ways that we'd like it to be done. And I do believe that we have adequate staffing right now. If we realign it and direct it in a way that's, full of clear intent and directed in the right way and guided in the right way, that we can increase these scores. Would more money help? Of course it would. But do we have what we need right now to do better? We do. And we plan on exercising all of those muscles this year, coming back to you with a little deeper analysis, coming back to you with how we're going with our literacy curriculum that you've already seen and identified this year, how we're using our learning walks to inform our professional development, to assess all the different ways that our 5 priorities are being used in the classroom and in school buildings every day, talking about our principal analysis and how they're going through their own grade-by-grade level analysis at each school, and we've asked them to do so, and they'll be presenting to you in the future meetings, and how our principals and coordinator meetings every other week are really trying to tie together the building leadership and also the curriculum leadership in order for us to all row in the same direction for this common improvement of our student outcomes. And obviously, we already talked about how our evaluation goals this year that we've already offered for staff to take advantage of are focused on those 5 priorities. So in the short term, I think we have a good framework to move the district this year and the following year. And we also really have to look at this being an assessment of one data point that I think matters. And also our principals wanted to make sure that we were saying out loud that they see real incremental formative data changes during the year with the students that they serve. And I think a lot of our elementary principals working with the DIBELS in the iReady data to make shifts in their student groupings and how they can shift students from one grade level to the next in terms of their reading and literacy scores, I think is important work that's happening every day. So this data reminds us that our 5 priority areas, I think, are going to be very helpful to focus on and anchor our work to. And we're also anchoring our budgeting and our resources to those 5 as well. There's work to do. There's absolutely work to do. But I think that people are working hard, and what we did yesterday with our entire staff, we asked them what they needed. So how often does the superintendent, the assistant superintendent ask 500 people, what do you need, especially through the lens of shifting, what do you need for instructional tools in order to reduce the achievement gap? That was the question. Was that correct?
We looked at each priority and did a little dipstick with folks of where do they sit? What knowledge do you need? what skills do you need for your toolbox? Teachers are terrific in terms of saying, I need more. I need a little more help. I need more tools for this. I need more understanding of how to use data. All of the priorities we kind of went through with each of them and did 500 answers. It was great to understand where the needs are. And so now we plan and we figure out how to attack it.
And the way that we got that data is that they were voting with their phones. So it was anonymous. So we said, here's 4 categories. What do you need in order to get better at Tier 1 instruction? What do you need in order to be more prepared for rigor in the classroom? What do you need? And it was pretty stark that we need more tools in order to feel confident in addressing the academic gaps that we feel our students have. That's our job. If we ask that question, we need to follow through with unpacking what that means. So the next survey that goes out is, please tell me what you mean by tools. Is it instructional materials? Is it professional development? Is it supervision? Is it collaborative support with your peers? Let's unpack that, quantify it, and go out and find how we can budget and make it work for the teachers. Our teachers are at high levels of willingness to do the work, and I believe that they're at high willingness of skill to do the work. But if they're asking for certain things in order to get that work done in a way that makes impact on students, and they're saying it's instructional strategies and instructional tools, then we need to get that for them. So yesterday was a really interesting day of feedback for us. And it was really helpful to hear it directly from them all in one day. In the mirror of what the elementary folks asked for and what the middle school and high school folks asked for was striking. So now we have new marching orders. We know something different as of yesterday. That's an interesting data point for us that we will now pursue along with the other work around the literacy work, the PD that we're doing, and we'll shape the PD from that. And we'll set evaluation goals around that work. And I'm really, really excited that our educators are using the ready-to-go eval objectives, because now all of this plugs into those things. It's either rigor, or it's supporting students who aren't meeting grade mark, or it's increasing culture and climate in their classrooms. So I think that we're rowing in the same direction. And the other exercise we actually went through is realigning the definitions of those 5 priorities. We all talk about it, but do we all understand it in the same way? We all see those terms differently. So we really wanted to realign that with our leadership team. And then we actually did an interactive exercise with all 500 staff yesterday. What do these mean? What do these terms mean to you? What does it look like in your classroom? And we did a thumbs up, got more feedback. Is this definition what you think it should be? Should it be edited? And we compared that data to what the leadership team provided to us 2 weeks earlier. So we're honing in on what we believe we're doing well, what we believe we need to support our teachers in doing better, or provide them the tools to do better work with students. And we're not waiting until next year to get the budget straight for what they need next year. We had a meeting today to talk about what we can do for all schools this year. We have 3/4 of the year left. There's work to be done this year in classrooms with teachers and students. They're telling us what they need, and we need to move on. An example of that is our first school that went and provided us a work plan that they want to institute and implement this week. We brought that plan to the Finance Subcommittee this morning. It was a modest amount of money that we're moving over to the Tucker School in order to support the leadership there in a lot of different ways. Many of the adjustments that were made were non-financially based. It was just realigning the current resources that we have, and we're asking all of our principals to look at their buildings in that way, and we'll all be reporting back on that information moving forward. So we are actively pursuing rigor, we're actively pursuing high levels of Tier 1 instruction, and we're actively pursuing what teachers need for us to give them in order for them to fulfill what we're asking them to do every day. And I can tell you very clearly that the willingness to do the work and the energy in the room yesterday in both the middle school, high school audience and the elementary audience was high. Everybody's ready to work. And we're very thankful for that approach, professionalism, and effort that the staff is giving every day. So if we had this information when we went to the warrant committee and they said, what do you need? We could have said, well, if you want us to be like Dedham, we could use another $12 million. But we know that that's not feasible. But And we did have a good conversation with the warrant committee, and I think that for the folks that were there, they were asking for this kind of information. How are you connecting the resources that we give you to a priority or a vision, and how does it impact in the classroom, and how is it impacting what you thought would work with kids and teachers? And if it's not working, how do we know? What do we want to do differently? And how do we want to pivot? So, in math, I think we introduced our new math curriculum about 4 years ago. Might be a nice time to revisit that, take a look at what's working, what's not. For our ELA and literacy curriculum, we are very excited to introduce that to the community in a pilot this spring and then fully in the fall. Obviously, our science has been working hard to identify the areas of success that they felt they needed to address, which they did. And so there's work being done. We want to support that work, facilitate the work for the professionals in Milton. And in our time here, we're saying out loud very clearly, what do you want us to help move, facilitate, and lead? But they're giving us the information that we need so we can support them in that work. And we're excited to do it with them. And I feel very thankful to be a part of a team that's working so hard. But there's work to do.
Question?
I just, first of all, I thank you so much. This is great, very informative, and thank you for taking the time to put this together. I did have a couple of questions and some comments. John, I appreciate the honesty. You explained that last slide to us. I think I've seen it over the years in different formats, and I appreciate you saying, like, although our per pupil is lower than a lot of our neighboring districts or DESE comparisons, I do appreciate that we're trying to work with what we have, right? And that sometimes it's not about money, and that we can do more with what we have. And I think that's an important message, I think, to send out to the community, especially on the tail end of the override that we just had. And I know a lot of times when we see those numbers and we're like, wow, that's really, their per pupil spending is so much higher, like $12 million more. And sometimes it's great, sometimes you don't see the results. But I really appreciate, like, what can we do better, like here, and then show that improvement and then continue to get that support. I think that's so important when people do see change, that it's much easier to continue to support something. So I really appreciate the efforts that you all are putting into showing results and being committed to that, and the entire staff. I do wanted to ask, I know we've kind of looked at ELA and math scores the last couple of years, and we've seen it kind of go up, down, sometimes, those changes. And I know we kind of monitor it, but have you just looking at it over the past couple of years, can you kind of pinpoint what's causing that? Or is it, you mentioned the change in the law for the ELA, and some of those. So, have you been able to kind of pinpoint what could be causing that?
For the ELA curriculum, I think that would be hard for me to say.
No, just in terms of the data, you were talking about the reduction in score,
for grade 10, are you asking?
Yeah, I think it was, sorry, the one on slide 15, and same thing with slide 16 for the math and ELA, what has kind of causing those in certain grades to be lower, and then it kind of picks back up, and so on and so forth. Is there anything that's is it the curriculum per se, or is it something else? Is it just kind of, we're just still dealing with, the aftermath of COVID and just trying to catch up kids?
I think it'd be hard to pinpoint, because there's just so many factors that go into it. And so what we're doing, John and I are uncovering with the leadership team and now with the faculty, is what could be missing, how can we address it, we're learning what faculty is asking for. So it's hard to pinpoint. I mean, we can talk about the pandemic, we can talk about grade 10, the law changing. There's lots of things we could talk about that's changing for students. Just being online is different. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are impacting student progress. So for us, we have to concentrate with what we said to faculty yesterday. What can we control? Okay. And let's zoom in on that and do some work on what we can control as educators in the 6.5 hours a day we have students. So that's kind of what we're going to be thinking about. Doesn't really answer the question totally because I can't really tell you.
No, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
One of the things I think we should remind folks of is that our principals and the curriculum folks are doing item analysis. So when they start looking at the questions that maybe a majority of students didn't get correct, or the majority that they did, we actually go through every question, or they go through every question and start to look at where did our students do well in our ELA curriculum, where did they historically or in the aggregate not do well, why not, how much time do we spend on that? So that kind of item analysis I think is super important for the educators to do, because that should inform curriculum and pacing guides. So the example I always give is if we didn't do well on mixed numbers in 6th grade math, then we should look back and look at the scope and sequence and find out how long did we actually spend on mixed numbers, and what was some of that work that we did, and maybe we need to dig deeper and maybe give more time for that part of the curriculum to be taught, examined, and assessed and mastered. So that kind of down and deeper level of analysis is at the kind of the teacher and director and department level. But a good news story is that we were in a science class in grade 6. I think we talked about this last weekend, the week before, but we had a teacher who had a anchoring chart in their room that defined mastery for every single student. This is what mastery is, and we're not leaving until we're mastering this concept. And at the end of the lesson, not only were they rotating the room to assess a certain, they were looking at land and soil and what was deeper, et cetera. And then they had to do an exit ticket on their Chromebooks and let them know what they felt comfortable that they mastered and why and how come. And that teacher had all that data to inform her next day of instruction. When we talk about using data to inform instruction, there's no better example than that science class in grade 6 at Pierce, where they weren't moving until they mastered. They were collectively going to go back and look and find out what they needed to do individually. Students had individual time to go back and master that task. In the class, we'd go back if it was more of a group task. And they were trying to, and trying very well to make sure that they weren't covering the curriculum, that students were actually mastering the curriculum. And the students were self-assessing. And then when they had student time with their teacher, I'm not sure what the term is called at Pierce, they'd go back and they'd get extra help and they'd take that exam again and they'd take that quiz again in order to show mastery. So these are the types of pockets of good news that we need to model, scale up to other departments, let teachers share that great practices can be done. We have to get back to mastering the concepts that are based in standards that are put forward by DESE, and make sure that, I think Carla asked a question, the question was something to the effect of the staff about a task being rigorous but maybe not connected to the
engaging, not rigorous.
Right. Yeah. Can something be engaging but not rigorous? And can something be engaging and rigorous but not connected to the standard? We really have to ask ourselves all of those questions, because we can work really hard, but don't mistake, what's the saying, don't mistake activity for productivity. Right? We want to make sure that we're aiming all of our arrows in the right direction. So there's definitely deeper analysis to do. Some of that's happening in the classroom and grade level settings, in the building settings. And we need to look at our directionality around student growth. I think that I was on a call this morning with other superintendents, and student growth is where we want to focus. We want students to be growing wherever they are. They need to be 1 step better or 2 steps better every half year, every year. And then the overall MCAS scores will take care of themselves if we have individual students growing and their growth percentiles going up. So that's an area of review that we should be doing as well.
Thank you.
And I would also say that now that we have Performance Matters online for teachers, a lot of teachers are plugged into that now, and they can see better, access at their fingertips, the scoring, range for all of the students that they have in their classroom. Whereas before, they're kind of working, without ready knowledge at hand. And if they want to know, if someone's really struggling, then they can go and look at their assessment on this platform and whatnot. And it takes them a while to find things and put things together. But now that we have the Performance Matter platform and all the data is right there for teachers and is so easily accessible, they can go on and they can see, like with a click of a button, how many of their students are in the red on a certain exam, on a certain assessments, and then they can use that to group their students for the next day, or think about intervention groups, think about what it is that maybe their high flyers need if so many of your students are already meeting the standards in the class, like what else can you do next? So that's some of the little tweaks and changes that we're actively building together as a system so that everyone has access to it. And hopefully that will help to push along, improving the tier 1 instruction just for everybody across the board.
It's a great tool.
That's great. And I also just want to comment on the absenteeism. I think we've done a lot of work as a district to really bring those numbers down. So thank you so much for all the efforts. And thanks.
I'll share. I have a question and a comment. I was actually going to ask a question about the absenteeism. Just looking at the chart on slide 23, there's, the chronic absenteeism rate is about 3 times higher for a number of subgroups compared to all students. Are you able to look at student performance by subgroup based on chronic absenteeism? And do we have a theory around, I don't know what we're doing as a district to drive down chronic absenteeism within subgroups, but is there a connection between absenteeism and student performance? And do we know what that is? And do we think interventions could?
The first intervention is getting them in school.
Yeah.
And when we see chronic absenteeism for the majority of our students, that means it's not just work with the student, it's actually the parent. So when a third grader is not coming to school on time or is chronically absent, that is not the third grader's fault. That's the parent's job. That's the guardian's job to make sure that they're in school and on time. And so I think that you may see some families that may call me and say, I'm really not happy that I was called 3 times this week to make sure my child was on time. And I say, if you want to come in and talk about it, we can come in and talk about that. We are asking folks to be in school. We are supporting folks to get into school. We've made transfers from one school to another in order to have people access school at a time that works for them. So we're reaching out to make sure that those things are in place, but we're also holding folks accountable. Being in school is the best thing to do school. You have to be here in order to get the work done. So I don't have a technical correlation right now, but I have several anecdotes that we're working actively with right now where we're asking and having meetings with families, and when they say this is my struggle, it might be before school care, it might be needing to transfer to get a different start time because their job changed. We will make whatever accommodation we can in order to help that situation out. But in the end, you need to bring your child to school. And there's an expectation for that because being in school helps, no doubt about it.
Yeah. The comment I have is back to the funding discussion we were having. And I agree that we have to have high expectations for students even within the resource envelope that we have. I've been doing a little math sitting over here, and the per pupil difference between our DESE comparables in Milton, the gap is $4,900 per student. We have a little over 4,300 students. That's actually a $21 million gap. Which is almost 30% of our annual operating budget. I guess, we have the budget we have for this year, we have the budget we have for several years going forward. I think I would just ask the residents of Milton, would a 30% increase in your earnings dramatically affect your cost of your standard of living? The answer is yes. And I think a 30% increase in our expenditures for students, would that dramatically impact our standard of learning? The answer is yes. And I want people in this town to see these expenditures as investments in our human capital and investments in the future of our town, and not a cost center where we're trying to drive down expenses. So anyway, I just want to get on my soapbox and say that I think $21 million is a significant amount of money, and our educators are working under lean circumstances and making the most of it. You know, I don't think money is everything, but I think results like this, compared to our peers who are working with 30% more than we are, there's something there. There's work to be done, and there's something here to be really proud of too.
Hi, Doug. I had a question, and you said something. I was looking at the performance of the student groups performance, and the percentage. It's on slide 20. And I think this story is one that's been recurring. I think this gap for students with disabilities, ELL, low income, African American, Black students, that the difference between the MCAS scores with the meeting and exceeding expectations there's a big gap. And I think as long as I've been in the district and my kids have been in the district, that gap has been there. And I guess one of the questions that I have, and to your point earlier, Carla, you can't point to one thing, right? I know it's a difficult story to unfold. Like what's the genesis of that gap? But something was said before, which was, are we covering it or covering versus mastery, right? And I think that's one of the things that I would be curious about, and maybe more so with the students with disabilities and other groups. I think there's that sense of like assume competence, right? Assume that I can. And I just want to make sure that that is the way that we are approaching all of our students, with that assumption of competence, because that then becomes the difference between I am going to assume you can master something versus I'm just going to cover it because I have to. And I don't mean that as a slight to teachers or anybody, but especially for classes, if you have kids who, in some of those cases, are multiple grades, and then they're being taught curriculum that they're going to have to pass the 8th grade or the MCAS, but they have multiple grade levels. How are we ensuring that there is mastery of that content for all of those kids? So I think there's so much to unpack, but I don't know if we start with that basic premise with all kids, of all of our students, and enter it with that idea of assuming competence and that they can master this content, and then look at it from there. I think that would be important, because it just seems like there's something else, and I know that many districts struggle with this discrepancy, but I think we've been trying to figure it out for so long. So, it likely is a combination of things that you've talked about. The curriculum isn't I don't know, but I wonder, are there other ways to approach, just other ways to approach it, and is there a mindset shift or something else to begin to address that? Because we can't have students who are, almost in some cases a third of a person, 21% versus 68% in that meeting or exceeding expectations based on different groups. So I don't know, I just think it will be great if we have more conversations around that and really try and begin to truly unpack that and figure out how to begin to bridge that gap.
So we actually had that conversation yesterday.
We did.
With 500 educators.
We did.
250 at a time. We talked about the definitions of Tier 1 instruction and rigor specific to this, as well as it connected to meeting the need, being action steps towards meeting the needs of students who were not meeting with grade level. And it starts with the definition of everybody needs to be in front of grade level content.
Right.
It starts with grade level content. You can't expect a child to perform on an assessment that is blue when you've only taught them red. Everybody needs to see blue. Everybody needs to be brought up to blue. Everybody needs to be engaged in blue. Everybody needs to be quizzed and retested and hopefully mastering blue. And so that's the first part. There has to be a standard, and we have to know that all kids can reach that standard. The second thing is the rigor part of that is how do you move students, and it's not through coverage, it's through being a warm demander. There was some great, this was a Mentimeter that we did. So we have 300 people putting their comments on what does rigor look like in your classroom. We had hundreds of comments of how they introduce rigor with children. What does that look like in their room? And we're all watching it populate the screen. So we just had that conversation. First of all, grade level content. And then how do we be patient enough and vigilant enough in our efforts to make sure that students we take the time with them to master the content. And that grade 6 science lesson is one of the ones that I remember for a long time. That was happening at a super high level at the Pierce Middle School. So that's the dialogue that we had. And there was a lot of other terms that folks used besides warm demander. There was a real lot of good thinking and descriptions of what that looked like in their room. And that's for every child.
Right.
And that might mean something different too. So when we get to children, and I think I spoke to this at the yesterday's, we were in a co-taught math class at the high school, and there was a young student in that co-taught class who was from a sub-separate class that was the most active hand raiser and participant in that lesson. He was accessing grade level curriculum with the support of the teacher, paraprofessional, and an educator at a high level. And so those things are happening in pockets that are really, when accessible to students, it's happening. But then for that also the big general population, all students need to be engaged with grade level curriculum. If we want them to learn X, they all need to see X. And so, that was part of the definition that we put forward. That was the agreement that we had from everybody that would be how we would describe it. But that's an important part of it, in not giving up on kids. They're all coming to school. The majority, high majority of our students come to school ready to learn, with breakfast in their stomach, or they can get it at school, and from a house that's excited about them being in school. And I think our attendance shows that they want to come back. They're also happy, right? So you have to be happy, feel safe, feel valued, and then when you have that, that's the first stage. That's warming the plate, and then you serve the meal. And the meal is high engagement, high expectation, grade level curriculum, and really taking the time to master. So. And that's, teachers do that every day. Like, I don't know about Carla, but we had 2 50-minute or 60-minute sessions with the staff yesterday. I was exhausted. That's like only teaching 2 periods. If I had to teach 3 more periods
all day long.
Of that, I would have had to take a nap at 3 o'clock. So, but our educators are working hard on that, and that's a real part of it. Being a warm demander, have an expectation, high support, high expectations, all of those things matter. And we have a lot of head nodding. I think we have a high willingness of our staff to be able to buy into that, and I think they do it every day. But the scores need to be improved.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's complex.
Yeah.
And they want more tools.
Right.
Correct.
There's a whole
we need to get
story.
I'll be very curious to see what you get as feedback around the tools, like what that means.
I'm fascinated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would just like to thank you, V, for always showing up with such clarity and just thoughtfulness to help us have context, but to really identify for us what those highlights are, highlights to celebrate as well as highlights to pay attention to for the work that we need to be doing. I feel like I'm used to by now you bringing that level of clarity and command over the data to share with us, but I would like to sort of acknowledge that to me the conversation happening here around what we're learning from this data in terms of informing what we are actually doing in real time. This conversation, to me, is connecting dots in a way that has not happened since COVID in Milton Public Schools at a leadership level. And I just appreciate that, because what you're talking about is what we can learn from the data specifically, how we are then using it to plan and carry out professional development, both sort of writ large as well as with individuals at grade level teams, etc. You're talking about curriculum and the way that ties in. You're talking about budget priorities and how to best align the resources we have in real time, as well as how to have that conversation sort of bigger picture with the community. And John, I just want to sort of compliment you for what is so clearly your instructional leadership and ability to like participate in, let alone lead the conversation about it. I think it's like you're bringing a level of rigor to that then raises the bar, you know, for the way in which all of our leaders, I think, can understand the urgency, but also like the practicality of what's needing to be happening. And I feel, with all that said, like I sure would love to, you know, sit here one time, you know, before I'm not on school committee anymore, and see some of these like persistent areas moving, shifting. But I feel like that was never going to happen until what you've started doing started happening, you know. And so I feel excited about it, and like grateful that for the team that's in place here to push it. And I like the opportunity to like do a both and, you know, to really push that while all those green, like the color coding in the boxes is important, because it is important for us to like do that, especially the science. Like, I mean, that's amazing. That is such great work. And I really appreciate that we're not letting that get lost either, in the need to be very firm around what the expectations are for how we're changing our practices to be able to expect improvements in, especially for our some of our subgroups that, you know, they just deserve better. And until they're getting that, they're not gonna perform better. So I like the balance of that. And I just, Nathan, appreciate your helping us like stay in the context of, and I feel like this was a big part of the conversation around our budget last year as well. It's just like our per pupil spending is one thing, our performance data is another thing, but to triangulate that to understand like the return on investment that we are getting for Milton residents, that's important, you know, because in that sense, it is actually a better news story than it might appear. And it's only getting better, because what you're talking about is like realigning what we already have in the meantime, you know, while this is what we have. And I just think the practical approach to that, with no time to waste, like I really appreciate that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. We appreciate, and we say it all the time, Kyler and I, that this is the teachers in the principal's district. It's the community's district. We're here to facilitate, so we're really happy to be like, while learning walks are amazing.
Yes,
we were seeing a lot of evidence everywhere we go. But I really think that motivating the staff to stick with it and ask them what they need and then provide it and follow through and really double down on supporting our educators will pay dividends. And to Anna's point, when we begin to show those good results and begin to show where the resources were to help those results come to bear and increase, then we're going back and saying if we can get a little bit more, we can do a little bit more. But we need a really good bump, not just in science but in other areas in order to demonstrate that. And so that's the goal. And I'm really thankful to be a part of a really great group of people. We had a great time yesterday with people who are all willing to do the work. So, but it's work, and we need to give them what they need, and we need to expect it and inspect it and work with them. But it's a good place. There's a lot of good work happening out there.
Asking them what they need.
Just asking.
It's like, that's very important to do.
And I think a lot.
Glad that you did that so they can tell you what they need so you can then get them
Deliver
what they
it.
need within what's possible. But
And respecting
those
what they do,
basic,
you know?
Yes.
those basic steps, if they've been happening, they've not been discussed like the way you're sharing that here and now. So I think it seems like such a very basic, but also sometimes that like getting, keeping it simple in order to stay focused. And the last thing I just want to call out is the 5 priorities. And I'm even thinking about like, how can we keep putting those in front of the community as well? I know you presented them first in early September, and they were there on the last slide tonight, but I'm not sure if that was shared or not on this. It will be shared, but people should be seeing it, because I feel like I would almost, as much as it's clear those are being internalized by the leadership team, the educators in the building, like everybody should know. You walk in, like these are the 5 priorities. Like school committee members, we all know these are our 5 priorities this year, and like the community should be socialized to those too, so that then we're able to track our progress, to those. So, thank you.
We'll provide you the updated definitions. That was actually one of the big exercises we did, was aligning all of our thinking on each of those areas, so we made sure that we had a common definition, common language, and that was part of what we did over the last 2 weeks as well, so we can bring that to the group as well.
Mark?
I've obviously a number of things. Again, really appreciate appreciate all the work, appreciate all the discussion. Committee members, I shared out slides, which I'm not presenting myself, but I love data. Dove into it as soon as it was public, for my schools and for Milton, and I agree with a lot of the things that have kind of been said here. I think just maybe not a few, that would be a lie, but some things I really think are important just to make sure we're talking about is our performance when you look at it as a high level, looks pretty good, right? We're in the 90th percentile for ELA, we're in the 85th percentile for math consolidated, we're in the 89th percentile. You said we're in the top 10% of all districts in the state. That sounds pretty good. And so I think at a high level that's true, but I think, again, looking at kind of where we've been historically, where we've been over the last 5 years, I agree with all the points I think y'all have been making, just echoing, there's so much improvement we can and should be making, and we have not been seeing it. I think from my standpoint, I think a lot of it is teaching is hard. It is very complex. Moving kids across all kind of different abilities, across multiple grades and multiple subjects is so challenging. And I think the biggest thing from my perspective that really has hindered that in Milton is that we have no coherence across kind of instructional practices to carry that across schools and across grades and across classrooms and share expertise and name what our instructional vision is. At least I have not heard that at this table from leaders over the last 2 years. I think that is what I've heard from y'all, work y'all are doing. Your instructional walks are helping to do that, name that for teachers, and to try and create that vision and collaboration across schools. And so I am certainly hopeful that will that will help, and that will be a piece, not the only piece, but a piece to kind of drive us forward. But yeah, it's very disappointing kind of how flat we have been, and I think we have to name that, like, we are just not doing well, especially in certain metrics. I think one metric I wanted to flag, well, a couple things, like the state is doing poorly too. That's 100% gotta say, like Milton is not unique to that. I do think, to a point you named, like we just gotta hold ourselves to a higher expectation though than the state, obviously. Like whatever the state is doing, we know we want better for our kids in this town, and that's where we look to. So I think the state is sometimes useful, sometimes not so useful, because like it looks like, hey, we're getting better, but that's just because the state's getting worse, and we're really just staying flat. I think the other one we didn't really talk about within your presentation is SGP, which is Student Growth Percentile, and that is a metric for how much are our kids growing compared to kids who perform similarly to them on prior MCAS. So kids who got a 455 on the prior MCAS and ELA. We'll compare those to other kids who got a 455 across the state and say, okay, where did they end up this year? And if you perform better than those kids, your SGP is higher. If you perform worse, your SGP is lower. If you perform average, you're at a 50. So like SGP is a very helpful benchmark to see kind of where we're at. RS, like of how you are moving kids as a district, how you're growing them. Our SGPs are not very good. They're like, our percentile ranks for SGP are 75th for ELA, 58th for math. Like that is, I don't think we want to be 58th percentile in the state in any metric, and I think we expect more of what our kids can do, what our teachers can do, all of that. So like that is something that, as I look through the data, is concerning. I think the other part about like the coherence piece and not having kind of consistency within leadership to help push through, I think you see that when you look at the grade by grade level kind of breakdown and the change over time. Like again, I provided this chart, slide 9, but for ELA, but it's just up and down. Like it is kind of dips and falls. Generally, as I look at like meeting and exceeding, a rigorous benchmark for that is like 70%. You can get more than 70% of your kids to meet and exceeding within a grade level, like that's good. That's a strong benchmark. Obviously, we want 100%, but like where we are, 70. When we look at pre-pandemic, Milton was there like pretty much. So half of the grades were above 70. Some of them were above 75. A couple of the grades were just south of 70. We only had one grade, 8th grade, in ELA that like was never ever really close to 70. Now everybody's below that line. We got like one grade that's kind of close. A couple grades are improving this past year. We did see growth across a few grades, but we're again not really close to kind of where we were. And again, it's been very herky-jerky. You look at like SGP for ELA across the grades. For that, what I think of as like a rigorous benchmark is 60. Right? That is again, 50 is average, 60 is you're growing much faster than average kids. And so if you can maintain 60% SGP across all grades over multiple years, now you're really humming. You're really moving kids at a faster rate than your comparison districts. And once again, if you look kind of prior to COVID, we had some times where we were doing that. Where we are now, we're not there, and we really haven't gotten there across almost any of the grades, exception of kind of 4th grade. 4th grade is kind of getting pretty close. They had a good jump this year. Had some good positive kind of momentum, and really pretty good SGPs. They're at 59. So like, when you look at math, it's actually a little bit worse. That was honestly something I was surprised by, because I know we've talked a lot about ELA here. Our math performance is actually not as good as our ELA performance. We are kind of even further below the 70% meeting and exceeding benchmarks across multiple grades. Only one grade is somewhat close. Again, that's 4th. Everybody else is pretty far down. And again, SGP also is further down, 4th grade being the only one to kind of surpass that. They got 63% SGP. So again, 4th grade I think is a highlight as I've kind of looked through the data. And again, then we look at school by school. That was another piece that we just like didn't talk about yet. I think, again, we talk a bit about it in the context of the Tucker, which again, I really appreciate the presentation John did this morning, the work that he and a principal are doing on trying to address learning gaps. That they are still, we saw a decline in Tucker's performance last year. Pierce, we saw a bit of a jump, but still below kind of the other schools. And I think when I looked at the data going back to 2017, which is to the point, the first year of MCAS 2.0 and the next gen testing, like this is a fairly recent phenomenon. Like Tucker and Pierce were not the bottom of the district. Tucker was outperforming a couple other K-5 schools in math and kind of right there in ELA. Pierce was like right there kind of with them. They're still, in some places kind of towards the bottom end, but the gap was not as significant as it is. That is a real post-pandemic experience that is just, I think we all agree, like just wildly concerning that we haven't been able to turn that tide around. And I think that's been because of, obviously we've had some leadership instability at Tucker, we've had leadership instability at the district to marshal resources in the way y'all are talking about doing to try and like give them support and turn that around. But I think my expectation was like this was a historic, long-standing kind of issue within the town, and if you look at the data, that's not really true. They've been kind of right there, and so this is a more recent phenomenon that I think we need to be moving with urgently. And I appreciate, John, the work you're doing to move urgently on that. The last point I just wanted to share is the piece on the selected populations. I know the presentation was around like, hey, we're doing better than the state average. I think that's a little bit, that's not quite the way I typically look at it. What I like to look at it is like, okay, we know how our students overall compare to the state, right? We know their percentile rank. If you take our students with disabilities and compare them just with all other students with disabilities across the state, what is their percentile rank? And if we are teaching them at a level compared to our peers, compared to everybody else in the state, those two numbers should align, right? If we're 90th percentile in ELA for all students, that means our students with disabilities should be 90th percentile among students with disabilities. And if we're doing better, then that number should go up, and if we're doing worse, that number would go down. That number goes down kind of across all the three selected populations I see. Again, students with disabilities, then down by about like 5 to 10%, low-income students by about 10 to 15%, and our black students 20 to 30%. So we are not teaching our black students well. The state as a whole doesn't teach our black students well, and yet we are doing, I think, worse than what the state is. And so those are just like data points that I think, to the point of John, like the urgency. I think regardless of what the dollar amount is, like that matters. I've spoken about it before. It is what it is for this year. It's going to be what it's going to be for the next couple of years. It just is. So I don't think it's worth kind of talking about it too much until like we get closer to a place where we can get an override and try and tell that story. Our kids they need to move quickly. And I think there's so much opportunity within Milton to do better than we've done, as again y'all have said and you've talked about a lot. But I want to highlight, as I was looking at those things, like some of those urgencies. I do think there are really good highlights. I think science is one y'all mentioned before, like that growth. We're still technically doing better in ELA than in science, percentile rank-wise, but science has made huge improvements, and that's really impressive. Collicott, I think, continues to be a real highlight. It stays at the top for both ELA and math almost every single year since the pandemic. So I think that's a highlight, and figuring out what Collicott is doing so well and like how we can pull that structure to Tucker, but also Glover and Cunningham. I think 4th and 7th grade both have made like improvements the past 2 years. 7th grade was our lowest performing grade 2 years ago, and now it's not our highest, but it has made significant strides upwards, as opposed to some of the other middle school grades which have struggled. So I think that's fantastic and stuff we should look at. So I don't mean to be too much of a downer here, because I do think like if you just look at it broadly, like it's like, oh, Milton's doing good, like Milton's doing well. But I think, to quote one of my mentors, somebody I work with, I think very highly of, it's like, we're not here to be good, we can be great. And I think that's like what we want out of Milton, is like we want it to be great for our kids. And so again, really appreciate the work, John, that you are doing, and Carla, that you are doing, that y'all brought, and those coherence. And like, I would love to continue to have these conversations. I think, like, so to Lizzie, to your point, just more we can be putting student performance conversations in front of families and making sure that it is like highlighting, and we can be clear about what resources we are lacking, if there are opportunities grant-wise, asking the town-wide, whatever it is, like what, if, I think you've raised it before, like what is the thing? Like if there's the thing we need, I will shout and advocate to the rooftops, as I think is my role from school committee, to try and get you that thing. But I think a lot of it is like the coherence, having the buy-in, having the structures, putting in the time to be in classrooms and see what's going on. So I appreciate the work that you're doing in that.
Yeah. And I do want to also say that like what you're doing and what you've kind of presented that you plan on doing this year and next year is like setting us up for success, you know, so that next time we look at this, we're hoping to see different results, which will, I think, energize our community as well, you know, to continue supporting. I think that's the biggest thing that we struggle with, not, you know, even us just looking at this data, and a lot of the points, Mark, that you brought up, just looking at this data year after year and not seeing a lot of change. Overall, it looks great, but like, you know, when you start digging in deep there, you know, I know many members brought up areas that are concerning, and we haven't really seen a lot of movement. And so I'm excited about what you are presenting, and I'm excited for it because I think it would really help like build broader support for our schools. And I think that's something that we're all really passionate about. So thank you so much. This has been really great, and I'm really excited. So look forward to the next, and more conversations like this. I think it's so important for all of us to kind of push that message out into the community.
And I think another word for coherence, Mark, is like systems. We need consistent systems. Initially, that was around finances, right? So now we're working on the systems for finance, but we need to reestablish the systems for curriculum and instruction and evaluation and supports and meeting and talking, and they're happening, and we need to support them and codify them and really make that part of the foundation of what we do, and support the people who are doing it. And so we're happy to be doing the work. Really happy to be doing the work. Which actually might make the next thing on the agenda something that the school committee will be happy with. So,
Thank you.
Are we ready to pivot? Bea, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bea.
Yes.
So under my report on letter C, in light of the conversation about the program of studies, my thinking of trying to figure out a way to create vehicles for school committee members to be a part of the work we do with curriculum in advance of some of the work that we do with curriculum, right, that gets presented at this table. My experience of having a curriculum and instruction subcommittee of the school committee to meet when needed to go over whatever work is happening in the area of curriculum or program of studies, which is basically curriculum, parallel and in advance to when we make these presentations to the school committee. So I would make it akin to policy subcommittee, where the players who are working in the area or whatever the policy is come to the policy subcommittee and say, we think we need a policy on this, we want to bring it forward to you. You ask the questions, how did it originate, what do we used to do, what are we doing now? From a curriculum standpoint, what that would have looked like last year would be, we'll go back to Kat DeRoche's presentation. You would have been in the room with us as we talked to her about what we were doing, why she was doing it, what the timeline is, what's the impact of her work, and been part of maybe 1, 2, or 3 meetings where we did that together as a subcommittee. So when it got to the table, at least half of the school committee was part of the process in the presentation, in the work, whether it be literacy or whether it be the program of studies, or whether it be a review of the math curriculum that we might want to think about doing, or a discussion about what happened in science that worked so well. So when we're changing or revamping or adjusting any curriculum work, we would want to call the curriculum subcommittee to be part of that work at an earlier point in time so the feedback and the discussion can be inclusive of the voice at this table, that reflects the representative group of our community in that conversation. And that way, when things come to the table, they have community voice through school committee voice. They have a vetting of that work that's done prior to coming to the full table in a way that I think the full committee can be assured that there's been voice and input and feedback and discussion with this group as part of it. And so we're not getting something that you just have to put salt on and eat it. You're actually helping us cook the meal, and you're being a part of the process as we do it. So I would propose that we create a curriculum subcommittee of the Milton Public School Committee in order to preview and work through issues that are curriculum-based that will be coming forward to the school committee for whatever reason over time. So I was trying to channel the goal of giving the school committee more time to preview and be part of before things are fully decided. And I hope that meets the need that we were kind of wrestling with at our last meeting that we were talking about with these program of studies.
I would just like to say I am very much in favor of this idea. I love it. I think it's great. We had a curriculum and instruction. I think it was formally called an advisory committee / subcommittee. A few years ago, former member Beverly Ross Denny sort of originated that as something, identified it as a need and helped to set it up. And I think that what we lacked at that time was a system to plug into for that work to feel, meaningful, connected, and helpful, in the way you just described. So I'm all for this. I think this seems like coming full circle in that sense, because when we took the step as a committee 2 years ago to sort of sunset that previous version, I think it was because it had not yet gained traction or sort of plugged into the system. And so I think at that point it made sense to just sort of pause it. And I'm really glad you're with the work you're leading now in a position to see the value of it. And I do believe it will be helpful for school committee members to have that visibility and opportunity to participate. So thank you for bringing that to us.
My recollection was a little bit different on why we sunsetted it. I thought Peter was suggesting we get rid of it just to bring the conversations to like that. Those are conversations we should be having at the full school committee involving everybody. I don't think we ever did that.
We never
well.
had them. That's the point.
I mean,
right.
Yeah, I'm not saying we shouldn't do this. I was just naming that as like that. I think was the logic that, as I remember it, of why we sunset it is like, hey, curriculum instruction is the driving force of the school district. We should be talking. Everybody should be involved in those conversations. We should be talking about that here. Again, I think if the department is saying that they think this will be a helpful mechanism in order to streamline communication and help move the work forward more quickly than.
But what that didn't accomplish, the sort of absorbing it into the full school committee, didn't accomplish the timeline piece that you've identified, which is the need to work sort of ahead of time, ahead of the full school committee's deadlines to approve various things, which we didn't see, I don't, anyway, so I just think that makes sense, because it's almost like that's what a subcommittee is for ultimately, is to kind of accomplish like the time, the effort, the work that needs to get done that's just beyond the scope of what's possible to do in these twice a month full meetings. So yeah, it's a good point, Mark, that the intent behind the sunsetting, I don't think was to like close it off or sort of sideline the important work of school committee members' involvement in teaching and learning strategy, investments, and whatnot, but in practical terms, that is kind of what happened on some level. So I feel like this is a good, to me, it's yet another dot being connected to the previous discussion that we were having.
Comments?
What would be the timeline? Well, if other, I'll start. This is my last comment. Sorry, but like, if others agree that this is a good idea, what is the vision for like a time frame for this, and a process, I guess, for identifying like who will serve on this and when you would like to see it?
So I would leave the makeup of the committee to the folks at the table. I would say the opportunities for this to be available and productive would be leading up to our conversations about the program of studies, which could happen in November, December, January for February review. We have a second presentation of our early literacy that's in February, so then that committee could meet again related to literacy and have the CATS team come and present to that small group and talk about the process and dig deeper into the discussion about what was working, what they did. So when the presentation is here, it might be at a little higher level, but at least 2 or 3 of the members will have a very deeper understanding of what that means and can speak to it. And then whatever other curriculum work we start to move through this year, I think would be part of putting on the agenda for that group. This, similar to how we do policy, we have to get this done, we gather the group. This will probably be more like 2 or 3 meetings per thing instead of maybe just one. So right now, if we get it together before the Thanksgiving break, then we would have a couple of meetings regarding program studies. What is the high school thinking? What is their goals? What are their shifts? And have that, begin. That would be the first curriculum subcommittee agenda item for us to explore together.
No, I think this is great.
So maybe if people are interested, maybe either, because I know it's new and it's discussion, if you want to maybe send an email and say if you're interested, and I think if we thought, if it was 2 to 3 members, is that a number that you're thinking at?
Yeah, usually it's 2 or 3.
Yeah. So if there are people that are interested and want to send, and then because it's a subcommittee, would we have to do a vote?
A vote.
So we would have to vote the members on the subcommittee. So we could look at getting, if people wanted to express your interest between now and the next meeting, we could put it on the November 19th meeting as a vote. Does that sound good? Okay. Great, thanks, John.
You're welcome. The next item on the superintendent's, while we're not meeting John.
We didn't.
2 hours here tonight. This is.
We blew it.
We have submitted the October 1 enrollment numbers to DESE, like we do each year. The submission on that date was 4,351. You can see from the document that we put in your file, we had a total of 321 kindergartners at that time, which is the new number to the district. The number that left the district would have been last year's seniors, right? You talk about what the grade is coming in, then you first thing you do is you pull out the grade that graduated. So we vacated last year's seniors, were 265. So that's a stronger number. I mean, that was a strong number for high school, but obviously a lesser number. Our grade enrollment changes weekly and monthly. But right now, our official number that we put into DESE was 4,351. This was also the same document that we submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority for our official enrollment, that then they take and they do their examination of our enrollment over the past 5 years to create their own enrollment figures that we are actually actively discussing with MSBA right now. And So I'm not sure what this presentation looked like in the past, so I'm just providing the document that we provided to DESE. In some districts, there's a deeper analysis of who's moving at what grades and what does that mean for our projections and trending for enrollment going up and going down. If there's interest in a similar type of analysis, I can actually do that over the next few weeks and bring back some sort of a presentation of the analysis of our data, of our enrollment data. Not knowing what the expectation was, I just provided the document.
I've never gotten this document before, so.
Okay, well, one step
Pull
on
it from the website when it gets posted to the website. For context, this was, it's a little bit apples to oranges because all the other years are the end of year enrollment, but this will be the 5th largest enrollment. Last year was 2nd largest was SY20. The 7 largest enrollments for all the last 7 years, but this is the 5th largest Milton's ever had.
And it's interesting that people would consider Milton a small town, which we are, but 4,300 students puts us on the above average enrollment in terms of district size across the state, which just goes to show you how many smaller districts there are out there. There's a handful of urban districts that have the 8,000s and the 12,000s, but the majority of folks sit in that 3,500 range. So we're on the higher side than average in Milton, and I'd like to. I'll be happy if our enrollment continues to increase. One of the things about enrollment for me is that I want every single family to send their child to the Milton Public Schools. And it's our job to, not only from a budgetary lens by doing good things so we can get support, but doing the things that we need to do to connect the dots between our work and student achievement to get every single child to come to school in Milton, and that's our goal. So keeping an eye on enrollment I think is important for a lot of reasons, but we always want to see as many students come to our schools as possible.
Mark, do you have at your fingertips what the enrollment was in 2020?
Yep.
So this is the 5th largest, I'm wondering.
SY20 was 4431. Last year was 4367, so we're 16 less than we were last year. Okay. 4320 and SY24, 4321 and SY23. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question to follow up on what you just said? Do we do any analysis of students coming back to the district from, I know that there are the years where students typically leave if they're going to go to private school. Do we have any data on kids that come back or like trends?
Yeah, we do see a trend. Our high school numbers have continued to go up. Mm-hmm. So what we're seeing is students come back in 9th and 10th grade. Yep. Whether they leave in 7 or 8 and come back in 9, or they leave in 9 and come back in 9. Yep. We do see that trend where the high school's numbers are increasing at the entry points of 9th and 10th.
That's great. Any other questions? All right.
That was it for me until we get down to the discussion around student assignment.
Perfect. Okay. All right. I will jump into the chair's report. So first off, just briefly, we went into executive session, and that was a discussion about the superintendent's contract. So that's an ongoing discussion, and we will be continuing to talk about that over the next few meetings. So that was a good discussion. The second update is we had a conversation a couple of meetings ago about communication and how we can, what are ways in which we can, better communicate with the community. One of the areas that we had talked about was having either a blog or a section within the newsletters that go out to the community that is from the school committee. So I reached out to Stephanie O'Keefe because John had volunteered her services to us, and she and I spoke and talked about what that might look like. And so what we thought about was having a section having a blurb written that we would submit to Stephanie on the Wednesday following our school committee meeting. And so what that would be is the idea of keeping it really brief and sort of a like a what, why next, what's next. So like, what did we discuss? Why did we discuss it? It was a vote, we had something coming up, that sort of thing. And then what's next? So we'll either discuss it further, it doesn't go anymore, we'll have a vote on it in the future, that sort of thing. The other thing that we could have in there is, since John and Lizzie and I meet Wednesday mornings, that we could also talk about the upcoming agenda items for the next meeting. So the next meeting we'll be talking about MCAS data, enrollment, et cetera. And then it would also have a link to the meeting. And then if there were any documents, say this was on the website, or there was information on MCAS, there would be a link to that as well. We also discussed that a way to keep it simple was almost have like a Google Doc for it. So it literally is, and we can figure out the exact wording, but if it was like what, why, what's next, and then it just keeps it really factual. So it's not like this, very, not like this really verbose paragraph, but it's really just an update on what we did. And so, two things. One, we could see if anybody wants to volunteer to do it. But knowing that we're having a meeting tonight and we talked about it, that I could tackle it this week with Stephanie working on that Google Doc, because it's short. I think it would be fairly easy for everybody to just sort of take a look at, and maybe it would be this: if we don't hear from you by Friday, we're going to assume nobody has issues with it, and then it will go to Stephanie. And then if we find that it's something fairly easy to do, we could either rotate it, or if there's somebody who wanted to take it on, or we can just see, that could maybe be a little bit more iterative. But if everybody likes the way that sounds and we want to start with that, we could look at doing that based on this meeting, sending it to Stephanie for next meeting. So on Wednesday, she would take it on, the first one would go to the all staff newsletter, and then she would send it to all of the principals, and it would go out into all of the principal newsletters on those varying days, because they go out through the week, through the weekend and the following Monday. So if everybody's okay with that, or if anybody has suggestions on anything different or anything else you want to approve, but it could be a good test, and then if we think we want to tweak it, we can go from there. So I'll be happy to handle it the first week, and then happily pass it off or continue to do it, but we'll just see how it goes. Good? All right.
Can Stephanie track, or can you track how many people click into the document and read it?
They track how many people open each newsletter. That's why we send things out with the principal, and then we send things out from the district separate. I'm not sure if they can track the clicking of each section of that, but I can ask her.
Okay.
Yeah.
You might be able to track.
They use Constant Contact that gives you that analytics, but I don't know
how much they break it down. Yeah, but she'll make that section look better too, so it doesn't look like just a blur. But we can ask directly if people click into it.
Sounds great.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. Short and sweet. That's all I have. So Finance Subcommittee report.
Oh yeah.
We have that as a vote. We have two things we're not voting.
We don't need to vote on the vendor warrants, so we did confirm with Katie that for our policy, because we voted to appoint me to sign the vendor warrants, we don't need to vote on them. I do need to read them out. She suggests I read them, so I'm still gonna do that reading where I say the vendor warrants and the numbers. Yeah. And I will still forward you the vendor warrants. I assigned vendor warrant 18 today. I've not forwarded that to y'all, I don't think. But the other ones I think I have. But yeah, anyways, we won't take a vote anymore, but I'll still call it out. And obviously, if anybody has questions, concerns, that all that still applies, let me know. You can go look at any vendor warrant you want as well. We don't need to vote. Finance Subcommittee, we met last week and this week. I'm going to start with this week and then pull up my notes from last week to try and remember what we talked about, because we're meeting quite a lot. Today we talked about two things which John referenced earlier. First was kind of some plans the district is looking to do around some slight reallocation of some financial resources to address needs over at Tucker, some instructional improvements or instructional improvements to instructional resource implementation to help give more kids what they need over there. And so really appreciate John sharing that. I don't know if you want to share more now, or if that's going to be at a future.
So I'll do a teaser because we're going to ask Principal Hoeg to come to a meeting. The Tucker leadership has identified different shifts in existing resources that they would like to make in order to really have clear intent in the work that they're doing with staff and students. And that involves the directors having consistent time to do a consistent protocol around what we're looking for in classrooms, how we can support teachers, and how that's going to affect student outcomes. That rearranging the existing resources and human capital, I think, has gone a long way in creating a consistent approach to our student achievement work around all grade level students, but especially those not making benchmark. There was a request for revenue to support our grade level facilitators, instead of meeting once every other week, for a small stipend that they get, to meet every week and be part of a instructional leadership team with the principal and the vice principal and the Unit B members that support the Tucker. That money ask is going from $600 to $1,000, which is $400 times 6, which is only $2,400. So we're not talking a lot of money, but the small amount of money expands the amount of time and flexibility. It includes teacher voice in that instructional leadership team at Tucker, which is super important. The other revenue need was, we have a 0.6 team chair at the Tucker. We'd like to increase that to 0.8, which means instead of working 3 days a week, that employee would work 4. On that 4th day, they would be acting more of a special education consultant, advisory, and coach in terms of going into classrooms, looking at that classroom through the lens of the special education students that she actually serves and understands fully, because she writes the IEP plans, she works directly with all the service providers, and also becomes part of this team of instructional team leaders within the Tucker. So the goal is to establish an instructional leadership team with the existing resources, adding some people to be able to attend through increasing the stipend, and to create a team of people that are looking at weekly what's going on in classrooms, what the supports needed are of the teachers, how we're looking at certain students in a way that we can support them further, using data to inform instruction, and actually creating a protocol that they'll all use when they meet weekly to go through every single child and work with staff. So the principal did an amazing job of creating a very reasonable package of shifts that have no cost to the district and some that have very little. This is in total $14,000 of a $72 million budget, which we feel was very worthy of supporting, advocating for, and funding. And this work with the grade level facilitators that will work out with the Milton Educators Association will create an MOA that they're entertaining. Could be a pilot for what we would want to do for across all schools. So we're going to use this as a pilot, and if it works at Tucker this fall, winter, and spring, then we are negotiating this year, and we can put it on the table as a potential tool that all the schools could take advantage of when we learn how it works and what works about it and what may not work about it. So really, really excited to support the active work of this year. We met with principals today. We have 3/4 of the year left. There's a lot of learning to do. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of outcomes to shift in an upward direction. And we've also asked this 5 other principals to start to give us that information about what are they working on, what have been their last 2 years of targeted instructional work, what are they working on this year, and is there anything similar that we can do in their schools in order to make that, get any initiative that they're doing right now over the hump a little bit. The flexibility of having the grade level facilitators, as an example, just unlocks the door of more time and more teacher voice into this work, which is a big deal. So something small can go a long way. So we'll be doing that with the other 5 schools as well. And again, we're getting into classrooms every week at the district level and the superintendent level, and we're asking people what they need, and we want to deliver on that so we can support them in making impact this year. So Tucker was the first to go through the process, and I appreciate everybody's support at today's finance subcommittee meeting. And I'm doing a learning walk there tomorrow, so we'll be presenting good news when we get there in the building at 10 a.m.
So we had that discussion for about the first half. Second half, we talked through capital requests, both some facility capital requests through Tom McCarthy, talked through that, and then also the technology capital requests. We'll come back to that in a sec because we're going to vote on the technology ones. But that was our meeting today. Meeting last week was spend most of the time reviewing slides that we put together for the warrant committee. Again, thanks to Assistant Superintendent Katie Blake for kind of creating that agenda, putting together slides. We talked through it, made some slight tweaks to it, talked through the presentation. Got very little into kind of the revolving accounts policies, which is something we told y'all we're trying to work on. That's on the agenda for our next meeting. But yeah, mostly talked through that presentation. We did have the presentation of the warrant committee this past Monday. Again, appreciate John and Katie being there. John's had a lot of late ones this week, and felt like that presentation went well. Really appreciate the warrant committee's engagement, participation in that. It was, as y'all know, mostly just like a 101 generally about the budget. Obviously, no information on our projected FY27 budget, but just how does the budget process work at the schools, and answer kind of general questions about how the schools operate through the warrant committee to kind of get them all up to speed, and then talk through the timeline overall, the timeline that we've shared previously with y'all. And so, that was really positive. So that covers kind of what we've discussed the last two meetings. Anything I missed? Okay. I'm going to just go ahead and read the warrants, if that's all right, first, just to get those out of the way. So I did sign a couple warrants here on our behalf. I signed warrant 17 in the amount of $257,605.50, and warrant 18 in the amount of $202,831.65. So again, no need to vote on that, but did sign both those, and I'll forward you the 18 momentarily. Any questions on any of the warrants or any of that update before we jump to the technology capital requests? Okay, so the technology capital requests, I can actually pull it up. Here it is. So here's the technology capital requests that were submitted to us that we talked about briefly. It's not too complicated. You can see kind of what was listed as being asked for. The $391 is the same amount that we asked and got funded in the current year for end user devices. What I appreciate about this is that he included the list of capital requests from last year that they submitted. Green was what was funded, red was what was not funded. So you see kind of the smart board replacements at the high school, the network hardware for Pierce, and Collicott Cunningham were not funded. And then so when you go up to SY26 and look at what they're asking for funding for, it is those three things that were not funded last year. So those are deferred capital costs from the technology side that we are looking to fund. Any other?
Yeah, so I met with Bob Patterson, our technology director. He also provided a narrative as well, and it was a strategic decision to include, and we will every year, what was funded the previous year and what wasn't, because what we want to make sure we're aware of, that we go into our capital meetings with our eyes wide open, that when something fails, and we have to maybe, in that awful case where we have to go and ask for money from the warrant committee to fix a server or do something, and they can say, well, did you plan for this? And we can say, yes, we've been trying to, get this work done over the last few years. And so we always want to make sure that we have that codified somewhere and it's visible that we're really looking at. So in the following year, we'll have FY26, FY27, and we'll have our FY28 request that goes out through the 5-year period as well, just to keep everything on the table for everybody to see and have visibility into. So I appreciate Bob's work on this, and also there have been several grants that Bob has achieved over the last few years that have provided supplemental income to some of these purchases and things that we've been able to do in the schools. So I appreciate his advocacy in taking the time to draft those grants in order to get some of the funds for technology in the district as well.
Can I ask a clarifying question? The last year's request and this year's request implies that for the things that were not funded last year, but the number of items and the cost of those items are the same as 12 months ago. Like, is that true?
There's probably an escalation of a certain percentage.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not built in.
Should it be before we vote on it?
Yeah, I mean, we could have them escalate these prices by a certain percentage point, if that would be helpful to the community for sure.
I mean, I defer to other people. It just seems like these things are things that would increase in cost over the course of 3 months.
Yeah, I think so. A decent point. I'm just not sure what that number is. Again, as we talked about, there are other funding sources that do help with network infrastructure that come from federal grants, like E-rate is a federal funding grant for schools for network infrastructure. That is used to help offset costs for things like this, exactly things like this. So it could be that he's incorporating some of that within this, although again, it's the same cost as last year. I don't know how quickly Bob needs this voted on and approved when the next capital meeting is, and so if this is something that can wait, or if we need to vote on it, and if it needs to be adjusted, it comes back. Defer a bit to, I guess, you two.
I think generally he keeps things generic enough that if the sum of money is there, that he is expending it in the best way he can in order to get the best deal to bring as many devices or whatever it is. The switches is something that's very specific. I would worry about that to be a specific number for sure. So I can ask Bob to turn around and escalate it by a certain number if you want to bring it back to the group at the next meeting, or you can vote the number. Either one of those alternatives can go either way.
Lizzie, do you know when y'all are meeting?
We're meeting next Thursday, the 13th, at 7:30 in the morning. But I don't anticipate that we'll be beginning to review proposals at that time. Okay. Certainly not, I don't believe. So, I mean, and the voting to approve the actual requests takes place like a little bit in the future. So I think there would be, I think it could go either way. You know, we could vote to approve this. It's titled a draft, right? So that provides like an approval of the kind of concept as presented, and then before it would be formally presented to Capitol, those updates could be included, I would think. I do have just a question regarding the phone system, which I appreciate the information he has included. I mean, to me, that's a very good anecdotal example of the leanness or frugality we're working with here, that we're needing to buy a used part off eBay to keep our phone system for the whole district operational. But I am also noting that, you know, it's not proposed to be replaced for a couple more years. And of course that can always change, and so that's what he's doing, John. That's what you're saying, is we're putting things out, they're on our radar, so if they need to get pushed up, they can be pushed up. But I'm just wondering whether, if we aren't including it for 27, you know, okay, but it's just sort of something I'm wondering about, whether we would want to look at that sooner. But maybe that's not actually, you know, I don't think that's necessary to get an answer on for this preliminary approval, but I do just, that jumped out at me.
Liz, you could ask a question from a capital committee standpoint. At the meetings that you hold as a capital committee, would Bob and I go and answer those questions on behalf of this document as part of the process? Has that been part of the process? Because we can do that and give the narrative is helpful. but to have the opportunity for capital committee members to ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
We make ourselves available.
Typically, they're there's like different departments come one by one and present their request, give some information about it, and then answer like kind of clarifying questions from the members. And those meetings, stretch out over a number of weeks, since it's all the town departments that need to come before the capital committee. So yes, but that would probably, for the schools, that would be both the consolidated facilities one and the technology one.
Okay.
Do you all vote on dollar amounts, or do you approve individual? Do you vote on individual things?
Yes, individual line item requests. And that, every year it happens that certain requests are not funded for a given department, and hence the ones that need to be brought back. But, there are also certain departments in town that really have gone like years with very deferred capital requests that are not able to be prioritized. So I think it is looking at overall like what hasn't been funded and trying to bring those pieces in at the same time as every department is doing that for itself to put its request forward. But yeah, the committee has not met yet at all, so I think next week is just the beginning of the process.
And just as an FYI, Nick Milano and Amy Dexter at Town Hall did ask for a draft just to get a ballpark, so we did provide them these documents in a draft, just so they could have the scope of what we're looking at.
Makes sense.
So that is in their hands at this time.
I'd suggest, given it's a draft and given Bob's put this together, we assume Bob knows what the numbers mean and that this is going to fit the school department's needs. I'd be comfortable moving forward with the vote, so I will make a motion to approve the FY27 capital requests presented by the technology department.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? I believe that is the end of the finance update.
Thank you. And policy.
So at our last meeting, we talked about, John was going to give an update on the student assignment discussion. So he was going to just explain it more in detail for us.
So Mark, if you could put that document on the screen, that would be super helpful. One of the discussion that we had at the policy subcommittee meeting was when we're assigning students to the Milton Public Schools who are new to us, how do we do that? And you're going to see a document that provides that on the right-hand side. And how does that correspond and connect to the unique assignment that we have in Milton for the assignment of kindergarten and then for grade 1 assignment? And then there was some discussion last year about timing that up for folks who are not kindergarten students currently in the system, but feel like they want to be involved sooner in the grade 1 placement. So that was the genesis of this discussion. The policy itself, after reviewing it, we did not see any changes needed in the policy. What we thought was most helpful was to be very clear with how we would operationalize that policy, and we made some changes in the timing of that operational document. So I'm going to ask folks to look at the screen, and I wish I had a laser pointer so that folks at home could know what I was talking about. But what we're starting with is on the left-hand side, you have the month of the year, and this would be any given year. This is not specific to this year, but every January we do certain things, and every March, April, and May. The second column is our current Milton Public School families and students and how these decisions about placement impact them. And then timing that up with how we welcome our new Milton Public School families and students to the Milton Public Schools. not just in relation to grade 1, but in general, how do we do that assignment in a very predictable, clear, and a transparent way. So as you look at January of every year, and this will happen this year, we'll have one pre-kindergarten night where we talk about what pre-kindergarten looks like. And that is open to our current families and obviously our new families to Milton Public Schools. In January, we have a pre-K night and a K information night. So those are two separate nights, and our staff get up and discuss what does pre-K look like. If you're interested in pre-K and your child's coming to Milton Public Schools as a 3 or 4 year old, this is what it looks like, this is how it works. And we do the same for kindergarten. In March, and I'm going to pause, all of our new families that come to us for kindergarten will be at that. We'll give them all the information and prepare them for the packets they have to fill out, what they need to provide for medical records, and we'll start the orientation for that. So that's the first big night for them. In March, we have our grade 1 information night that is also open not only to current Milton Public School families, but is open to non-Milton Public School families. That's where we discuss the unique transition from kindergarten to grade 1 due to our programs that we offer at the elementary level, the French immersion, in our pathway classes that we take in science on the English side of our curriculum at the elementary level. In April of any school year, the first round of students in our current kindergartens of that year will be placed, like we do for all students in every grade. We begin the planning process for the next year in middle school and in high school and in elementary school and in first grade, and talk about how many classes will we have, what's the student will be, what school will they go to, what grade will they go to, where they'll be placed. So all grade 1 students will be assigned to their first grade class by May 1st. Again, that is similar to how we have to organize our approach for advancing everybody's grade from one grade to the next, K to 12. So that's done at the elementary schools, the middle school, and the high school. It's really important to our kindergarten parents because this is all about the program choices they make that we have to determine through how many students sign up for French and how many students sign up for the English science pathway. In May, and on the right-hand side of that, our Milton Public School families that are new to us will start to fill out in April the registration documents needed to become a Milton Public School student for the following year. Our non or new families to Milton will do that in April and in May, while we are assigning all of our current students to their next grade classes. So in May, the assignment will be determined and communicated by May 1st of each year for our school kindergartners who go to Milton, and they'll know their first grade program and their first grade building at that time. On the other side of the ledger, our new students will continue to enroll in the second round of assignment for all students to all grades, inclusive of grade 1, will be made at the end of June. And there's two things that I want to make sure that people understand that we're doing here. We're creating a very clear pathway for when folks apply to go to Milton Public Schools, put their packet in, when they will be communicated with what their school assignment is. If you're a non-Milton Public School parent, you will know by June 30th, if you get your documents in June, in April, May, and June, you'll know by June 30 before the summer starts what your child's school assignment is. If you are a non-Milton Public School family who move in during the month of July, we batch all those up and we let everybody know what their school assignment is. We don't do those family by family. We let them build up so we can assure that we assign families to new schools in new grades and new classrooms to keep our class size balanced. I think I spent some time on this in June where you can look at your student, you can look at the enrollment chart for elementary and notice that our class sizes across grades and schools are fairly well balanced. We start with what school district they live in, and then what's the best class size, and we go from there. Where this connects with the grade 1 is that our grade 1 assignment for Milton Public School existing families and for new families to Milton Public Schools for grade 1 will be the same time, will be June 30th. In previous years, there was a time where Milton Public School current kindergartners were assigned, but we didn't assign non-Milton Public School families until the third round. So we're basically extending that deadline and making that a similar deadline for non-public school families who are coming to us for grade 1 and our existing public school families who will be going into grade 1. The continued blocks that you see on the right-hand side for July and August just describe that we will be transparently collecting more information, collecting packets. Those who have full packets will be placed in their schools by July 31st, and the next round by August 15th. And then anything after August 15th is done week by week because we're starting to open school. So if I'm a new family moving to the town of Milton to go to the public schools, I can go to the pre-K night and the K information night. I'll go to the grade 1 night. I'm thinking about being a family for starting in September of the next year. Here's the timeline of how you can do that, whether that's a kindergarten enrollment, preschool, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the scope and sequence for that. And the only thing that we're doing different is, after hearing feedback from community members about wanting to be included earlier in the grade 1 assignment, we pulled down the round 2 and we made it the same time that we would introduce non-Milton Public School parents in order to access the grade 1 choice of either French and English. And hopefully this resolves some of the challenges that we've heard from families about having to, do I take my kindergartner out on June 1st from their private kindergarten just to be considered a Milton student to be assigned in the second round? We don't want to make our families who live in Milton, who are taxpayers, jump through hoops to be able to access the program in that second round time. However, we're not doing it in the first round because it's May, and we have to place our own students not only in grade 1, but across all of our grades and update our system and get it ready for the next school year. So this to me is an adaptation of what we were already doing in favor of our students who are new to the system for grade 1 that will be involved in the second round of assignment for grade 1. And it also clarifies very clearly, if I'm new to the district, no matter what grade my child is, when I apply and have my packet approved, I'll know exactly when my school will be assigned. And this will be an annual document. That's why there's no years on it. It's only a month. This will be a rolling operational protocol for us to follow.
Thank you.
Just want to say I appreciate your work on creating clarity on this, and this being something that can be easily shared, and the logic, I think, makes sense of, again, grade 1 is just one of 13 grades, 14 grades that we have here. And so for all of those grades, you move your current students up a level, and then you take new students and figure out how to plug those in. So I appreciate that, but also the accommodation to try and bring that, bringing those new families for first grade a little earlier in the process than they've been in the past to, as you've said, avoid those perverse incentives and hard decisions that some families made. So I think it's a well-reasoned process, and I appreciate you sharing it.
You're welcome.
Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah, facilities. We have the FY capital requests, 27 capital requests document in our folder that Tom had put together. We did talk about this very briefly at our last facilities advisory committee, but we did not go into like a lot of detail and kind of whittle down what we can, because it is a pretty high number. The request for the next year. So I don't know, John, if you had any conversations with Tom since our last meeting to kind of update.
Sure.
Okay.
So Tom presented at the Finance Committee today.
Okay.
I was there for half of that discussion. I did have to leave the meeting for another meeting, so I would defer to Amanda and Nathan and Mark. I believe Tom's methodology was to make sure that he represented every thing that was needed, similar to how we approach technology, to make sure that people were aware of the needs and not put something down. So because you don't want to ask for too much, knowing that the 3 $1.1 million is a lot for 1 year. Tom also talked about his strategy around making some of the requests not specifically building-based, but district-based or school, elementary based. So those funds, because capital funds have to be spent on exactly the thing that was voted, by having it be more generic, it would allow him to have more flexibility. If a water heater went, which it just did at the Cunningham, or if the elevator went, which it just did at the Tucker, that when those dollars are more universally labeled, that they could be expended a little bit more flexibly from a capital perspective. And I'm sure he'll be explaining that when he meets with the capital committee and his rationale for that. And I'm not sure exactly what else was talked about after I left, but that was the general strategy from my understanding.
And Tom is actually a member of the capital committee, so that's helpful because he's going to be at the table automatically during the discussion of prioritizing, among the requests too, both for the schools and the town side. So I support the idea of putting it all out there. Totally support that.
No, I think that makes that, after you explaining it, I think that makes sense.
He did call out, we were asking about certain items. I think fair to say top of one that is on the top of his list would be the lighting replacement at Brooksfield. I can't say that was higher than anything else, but that was definitely one that seems like the amount of money that they're, one from an energy efficiency standpoint, the other from just a keeping it working standpoint. It's just sort of keep putting money towards it, where that's something that just has a huge impact for both the people using the field as well as budget-wise from the standpoint of the energy efficiency. But yeah, I think, we just looked at were there other ways to group things together, but there was no other discussion about really prioritizing things differently.
Yeah, I'll say I expressed, I think, to you hesitation of like, oh, we're going to submit a $3 million request. Right. I think, again, to the point that's been made, I agree with Tom's logic after he shared it of put it all out there, and then if they don't fund it, at least we're clear that this was a need. So if something fails, we've been clear that we were concerned it would fail. Similar to kind of what the conversations with the technologies of like just sharing what the past requests have been and being kind of clear on that. So that was persuasive to me. The only other thing I'd say is it not necessarily a funding in the current year exactly, but there you can see multiple things here related to Brooks Field, the track, the turf replacement, the bleachers, and the lights. And so there's a lot of needs over at that Brooks Field, it appears. And so one conversation we did have was potentially adjusting this to maybe push out the bleachers and add some type of fee for or funding for consultants to look at that more holistically, kind of given all the needs and make sure, given that's a larger project similar to what we did with Cunningham, like bring somebody in to look and give good cost estimates associated with what it would take to bring all those spaces up to par. Have that be a bit more of a robust backing behind whatever the request is, so we feel confident in that.
No, that's great. And I do also want to stress that the field does get used by a lot of town sports too, not just the high school. So a lot of our kids use it from kindergarten onwards. So it is, obviously making sure that we have good playable fields is huge. So it does get a lot of use. But I like your point about bringing in someone to kind of look at it.
That was Katie's idea.
Yeah.
That's good.
So do we vote on it today? I know there's a motion in there to approve, not vote. It's a vote? It is a vote.
Yeah, it is a vote.
Yeah, it is a vote. Sorry. So I will make a motion to approve the FY27 capital requests presented by the Facilities Department.
Second.
And all in favor? Great.
Thanks, Anna. Negotiation subcommittee report.
Yeah, great. So the negotiations subcommittee met yesterday with Milton Educators Association Unit A representatives, negotiation bargaining team. And the purpose of that meeting was to kick off our negotiations for the new 3-year contract. We did introductions across the 2 teams, and we established the ground rules collaboratively, sort of work together to agree upon ground rules that will guide the process throughout this year of negotiations. It was a really great meeting. I think everything got off to a very positive start, and we're definitely excited to move it forward now. Sort of what to expect in general terms is that we did, in addition to introductions and establishing ground rules, we were also able to kind of look at calendars and map out when meetings will be taking place for negotiations. We'll be exchanging proposals between the teams in December into the early part of January. And so then actual negotiation sessions will begin in January and carry on from there. So it was a very positive start to the process, and yeah, we'll keep everybody informed as it moves forward. Anything you want to add?
That was a very productive first meeting, not only with ground rules, but also with dates. So that was a very positive, good first step.
Yeah.
For sure.
Great. We'll be spending a lot of quality time together over the months to come.
They're all good folks.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Lizzie. MFE representative report.
Okay, so the MFE's first meeting was on October 21st, a couple weeks ago. And the first meeting is basically like introducing each other, to get to know each other, because I'm the new member to that group right now, representing this group right here. So MFE stands for Milton Foundation for Education. Yeah. So Wendy New was the chairperson of this group. The meeting was mainly discussing about the Monster Dash, because it was right before the Monster Dash, and it was a great success. I saw Mark and Nathan and also Lizzie's families there as well. So there's a lot of people come out and support this event, including a lot of the educators in the district. I think it was a great and successful event, and we hope that in the future more family can come out and support this. And I was told that they have more than almost 500 artwork standing for the teacher design. Yeah. And the winner was a 5th grader at Tucker. Yeah. So it was great. They are in need of, they're looking for volunteers who would like to join the group, especially people who have experience being a treasurer. So just want to put a plug out here for people who are listening or watching. If you're interested, please feel free to join the next meeting, which is on November 19th. And they usually start meeting at 7:30 at the Milton High School Library. Unfortunately, I have a school committee meeting that day, that night at the same time, so I will not be able to go, but I will update you guys with any other important stuff. Okay. That's my report.
Thank you. Budget Coordination Committee.
Can we take that one? Yeah. Well, the Monster Dash was great. It was my daughter Alex's first 5K. We did it in 45 minutes. So her fastest, my slowest. Budget Coordination Committee. So substantive portion of this meeting really focused on the sort of work that the committee will do around policies There's going to be a couple of work groups that will try to tackle the 3 principal policies that we're looking at for that will kind of guide long-term planning. So there's a policy related to debt management, policy related to financial reserves, and one related to capital reserves.
I think so.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
So I believe there's 2 work groups that are going to focus on this, and Mark, correct me if I'm getting anything wrong here. And then we spent some time, the chair of the warrant committee had some analysis and ideas related to what those policies should entail, or some portion of them. I actually had to leave sort of partway through his presentation. So I'm not sure that we got very far into that, but so that's where the work of this group is going, is to sort of finalize those policies, which will guide, multi-year planning.
Great.
Just flag that those are select board. Those would become select board policies, so they're not policies under the purview of us. It's most the select board. Town administrator drafted them, and they ultimately be approved and used by the select board. But they're getting that group's input as they're developing them.
And as a starting point, I mean, Nick did a great job drafting those initial. It's not like we're starting with a blank page and kind of wondering where to go. Like it's a
he's doing a lot of work.
A quick question. As this budget coordination committee sort of continues into budget season, I understand starting and thinking through those policies, but is there also the plan that this committee will be functioning similar to how, like, the joint finance committee meetings used to happen between select board and school committee, in which like information is being shared around the budget requests themselves as they're coming together, or is that separate? And if that's not, that can be a parking lot question. I guess I'm just interested, as we round this bend towards December, like what role will this committee be playing in the budget process?
I think the goal right now is to focus on the policies in hopes that those policies are established for the budget season, so that they can inform what then the select board and the town administrator is doing in the FY27 budget connected to those new policies. So that's that. But then from there, I mean, some of the information sharing has already happened. I wasn't at the meeting, but Nathan was, where the town administrator gave the same presentation he gave to us at Finance Subcommittee, but gave it to the whole group on expected revenue and expenses for the town for next year. And so that's obviously the first part. And then when we start getting into budget requests, I definitely foresee a future meeting in which we share kind of draft budget. Once we have that and start sharing that, I think we'll also, obviously John has developed a good, strong relationship with the town administrator, even outside of that, so I think there will be ongoing communication. But in terms of us and the select board especially, and us being able to like say what we need directly to the select board, and vice versa, the select board can come and say, like, this is the constraints of the town and this is why we need this. That is a part of the charge of the committee, and I think there will be more opportunity to do that when we kind of hit that budget season, either December or January, once we have again draft budgets. And our focus is, as we've said before, we want to make sure it comes through this group first and y'all get a look at it first, but then once we feel good about the direction of that budget, definitely want to bring it to them to get their feedback, as we do with the warrant committee, and we talked about with the warrant committee.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
All right. Next is approving the minutes from the October 22nd meeting. If everybody had a chance to look at them. Okay, and so I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes of the October 22nd, 2025 Milton School Committee meeting. A second?
Second.
Mark. Okay. All in favor?
I'm going to abstain because I missed a good part of the first part of it.
All right. And then the last thing, is just looking the draft agenda items for next week. So We have a report out from the MASC meeting, so I'm going for one day of that. We also have the 2024-25 annual report will be given to the school committee, and then subcommittee reports. So will we be, facilities will be meeting, and policy?
Policy will meet.
Okay, and finance will, Lizzie, and you said capital?
I'd like to add that I'd like to welcome the Tucker Playground Committee to present to the group, if that's okay.
Yeah.
They've been doing a great job of reaching out to different folks, and I think we would love to give them some visibility at the school committee meeting for their work.
Will they be coming to facilities before then? Because it's the day before if they wanted to.
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea.
Okay.
They don't, I don't really know if facilities, I'm not sure they're at the stage of needing to come to facilities now that I think of it, Anna, because this is just their fundraising, getting the word out of what they like to do and what they're hoping to raise money for, to give them some face time with the community. I think they'll probably go in front of the facilities committee when they have the money raised and they're ready to bring plans to the facilities committee. So maybe we just have them come and just give them the opportunity to talk.
Great.
And I didn't know if we wanted to have the Tucker principal come and talk about her planning work for the year.
That'd be good.
So, okay, perfect. And we have curriculum subcommittee.
And the curriculum vote. Yep.
Curriculum subcommittee vote.
Anything else? That's it. Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Thanks. All right, meeting adjourned.